So my name is Ramesh. I'm actually talking to you from across the causeway in Singapore. So we're not far, but we're still not very close either. So to start off, I'm just going to turn on my webcam so that you see me. And yeah, I think the webcam is on. So hi, good morning, everyone. Yes. So as you can see, yeah, I'm in my home giving this presentation. And forgive me if there's any technical difficulties because during the day, there's some school children using the broadband, people are working and all that. So, which is why I will keep my webcam on for a while in the beginning of the presentation. But as I get into the parts where I talk more about the book publishing and the processes and all that, I would be turning off my webcam so that you guys have the best audio, uninterrupted audio, and also the presentation slides, as I go on to my talk. So today, yes, I'm talking about academic book publishing in Springer Nature. This is something that I have been doing since 2012 with applied sciences in Singapore. So maybe some of y'all know me, and I'm actually in charge of the Malaysian region as well. So first, let me start off by giving you the agenda for today for my presentation. I'm going to go through very briefly a little background about Springer Nature as a company, and then I'm going to talk about jump into the books. I'm going to talk about the types of scholarly books and book series that Springer publishes. Then I'll talk about book and research distribution, which is really important. If you're an author, you want to know how your book is being outreached to the audience. I'll talk about book indexing, mostly by Scopus. I'll also talk about book publishing process, for example, how to prepare a book proposal, the review process. I also talk into for open access as well, because open access is something that is being developed. It's not very common in our part of the world, but it's becoming a mandate to publish your scientific content in the open access manner. And also I'll be covering on ethical compliance issue, post-publication, the future of books, the kind of technology that Springer is investing into it. And then I will, of course, end off my talk with a little Q&A. I might even make a pause in certain parts of my talk to see if there's any questions. I will stop and ask Mabel if there's any questions. Let's type in the question box. If there's any, then I will just continue. So let me start off with first introducing Springer Nature. So who is Springer Nature? So Springer Nature is basically a company that was merged together in May 2015. So many of you guys probably recognize the brands Springer as well as Macmillan Science and Education. So these are two imprints or two companies that have been around for a long time. And in 2015, it was decided that these two companies will merge together and form a new company called Springer Nature. So what is the reason for this? Basically, if you think about it, Macmillan and Springer, we publish different imprints. Like for example, for the Macmillan side, there was Nature Research. Then of course we have the Springer, and then Springer has BMC. And then from the Macmillan side, we have the Scientific America, and then we have the social sciences part of the Macmillan, and of course A-Press, which is the computer science. So basically, if you can look at it and the whole portfolio of the imprints, you find that it is a whole spectrum of imprints which complement each other and not compete with each other. So this merger was something that was very that made a lot of sense, and then that's why it occurred in 2015. And this is the other Springer imprints as well. So just to give you an overview, Springer Nature has about over 175,000 years, 175,000 years in academic. You can see that there are companies that's been around since 1682, and with that we employ over 13,000 employees over 50 countries. We publish over 3,000 journals. If you go to the springer.com website and the nature.com as well, and we publish over 13,000 books annually, not overall. Annually, we are adding about 13,000 books a year. We are leading in terms of scholarly books. We publish many scholarly books every year. We are one of the trusted brands in the market of scholarly books. We pioneer in open access research. We have the largest open access in terms of number of journals and books. And our online databases, which is the Springer Link and nature.com, we have over 250 million downloads per year. And of course, in our ranks of authors, we have many Nobel Prize winners. So we have attracted many good quality authors as well. And Springer Nature is, of course, the largest scholarly book publisher in the world. So this is data obtained in 2018. And you can see that Springer is way up over here in the three fields of medicine, STM, and social sciences and humanities. And this is followed by the other competitors. And we also lead in terms of ebooks as well. So ebook publishing, this is data obtained in 2018 as well. You can see Springer Nature. I think there's a number missing here. It should be 168,000, and of English language book ebooks. So we are obviously we are the leading in terms of scholarly books. And in our book portfolio, we publish books in 21 ebook collections. So this is basically collections, subject areas that we have compiled all our book titles in. And I'm sure Ken would also be able to contribute. So these e-collections are basically also how our licensing manager, our sales colleague are able to sell the content to the libraries. So this is all the different 21 ebook collections. You can also see this on the Springer Link website, or there's also a YouTube video link that is shown below if you would like to know more about the different subject areas. And as I'm speaking, I hope you have spotted the subject areas that you are associated to. So I definitely invite you to go in Springer Link and view our book portfolio. How are we different from the other publishers? Well, as I've been talking in the past few slides, we have an unrivaled book portfolio, an exceptional publishing and reading experience. We have a lot of content, and we have findable and searchable content. We have made a lot of effort in making sure that it's findable. Also, we offer a strong book portfolio and also high-level author services across all the academic disciplines. We offer a lot of support in terms of production of your book, the typesetting, the figures, sometimes the drawing of the figures we help as well. And of course, the aftermarket marketing and things like this, which is really important. And we also combine our expertise with innovation. That means innovation in the electronic world, trying to make your book more smart, more interactive. So we are looking into that. We're definitely looking into that, developing technology into our book and making sure that the idea of a book product, it will survive further down the road. So next, I'm going to jump into the topic of book publishing. at this point of time, I think what I can do is I'm very worried about the quality of audio and visual that is presented towards you. So meanwhile, if it's okay, I'm going to turn off the webcam to save the broadband so that you guys get to hear the good stuff uninterrupted. I'll see you in a bit. All right, perfect. So let's jump into book publishing. So first thing you ask, what are scholarly books and what are they? What kind of books do you have? So this is basically a chart that shows Springer's portfolio of different type of scholarly books that we have in our portfolio. So I would like to take a little bit of time to go through this list. So first, I will start off with the top orange, which is monographs. I hope some of y'all or most of y'all know what's a research monograph. So a research monograph is basically, I would classify it as a scholarly book that concentrates on a certain research topic. So it's mostly written from a researcher point of view, and is describing describing the latest technology and state of the art content for the research topic. And then we also have briefs. Briefs are basically very similar to research monographs, except that these books are more niche, they are thinner. So for research monograph, the thickness of the book has to be above 200 pages. While for Springer briefs, it caters for books in about 100 page or 80 page or 90 page. And then we have this Springer thesis over here. So for Springer thesis, as it suggests, it publishes PhD work. So students who have completed their PhD at the end, they can write this as well and contribute to Springer. And then we have conference proceedings. So this is catering to researchers who organize a conference and would like to publish those conference articles presented at the conference in the form of a book. So these are conference proceedings. And then you have edited volumes. Edited volumes are very, very similar to monographs. Monographs are basically authored scholarly books whereby you have maybe one author or you have three or four authors. But edited volume is a little bit different, whereby you have a book editor, and the book editor organizes the book on a research topic, but he doesn't necessarily write all the chapters. So instead of him writing all the chapters, he invites certain leading experts in the field to contribute chapters to the book. So he's more of an organizer. Of course, he must be a respected guy in the field. If not, if he sends out invitation, researchers may not respond to him, because they do not know him, so they do not believe that it will be a very good book that will be organized. So a book editor is someone who's able to attract leading authors to write chapters. And then I move next to handbooks over here. Handbooks are basically, as the name suggests, is books that are supposed to be sitting, for example, in the lab, in your lab, where you can just reach out for it, and it contains a comprehensive review of the research area that you're working in. Like, for example, the title here suggests a handbook of solar energy. So if you pick up a book of handbook of solar energy, that you'll be able to read from front to back the whole spectrum of what's known about this research topic. We also have what you call major reference work. So major reference work is a type of book product that encompasses handbooks as well. As you can see, there's a handbook project in the middle, the Handbook of International Investment and Law Policy. And then you have dictionaries as well, and you have encyclopedias as well. So these are major reference works. These are very broad books. So they are very thick. Some of them are multi-volume. So we have major reference works that come in 21 volumes. You know, these are very broad areas. Like, for example, we have a handbook in child psychology. So that was very, very big. It had, you know, 10 or 11 volume books. And then, of course, everyone knows we have also published textbooks. Textbooks, I guess, it's in the instructional manual which course or a lecturer would use in his course to teach his students. And lastly, we have what you call professional books. So professional books, as you can guess, is catered for people working in the industry. So the book will be very related to a certain industrial practice, where, for example, I'm a scientist, so I would, where an engineer can just use that book for a certain process or engineering technique that he can use. Yes, so I've covered the whole spectrum of scholarly books within Springer. So this is a typical academic book author journey that we have in Springer. So we usually have two approaches, whereby we have a proactive author and we have a reactive author. So if you look on the left side, excuse me, a proactive author is an author that decides to write a book. So when he decides to write a book, what first thing he does is he contacts, for example, hopefully he contacts Springer with the book idea. Or if you compare this with a reactive author, a reactive author is when the author is actually invited to write a book. So for example, for me, if I go to a conference and I see that this author, this potential author who has presented at a conference on a very interesting research topic, and he gives a very nice overview, so I can also go to him and say, hi, I'm Ramesh, would you like to write a book for us? So, and then once these two different type of authors, what they do is the first thing they have to do is they have to submit a book proposal. And usually you develop this book proposal with the editor. In this case, it's me. So you will submit a book proposal to me. I will look into the book proposal. I will make sense of what the book is about, the table of content, the info text, the author. You know, I look into whether the author is he has the correct experience to write this book, and then sometimes the book proposal also goes through a peer review process, whereby the book proposal is submitted to maybe a certain book series editor or an external expert to review the book proposal. So once we have agreed and Springer is happy with the book proposal, the author signs the book contract with Springer, and within the book contract, we decide when the manuscript will be submitted. So the next step would be when the author writes and submit the book manuscript, which will also again undergo a peer review process. And then once the manuscript is approved, the manuscript is handed over to the production for typesetting, copy editing, proofing by the author. And then finally, the book is published. And then after when the book is published, of course, the author and the publisher promotes the book. And, you know, success depends on certain things like the downloads and things like that, or, you know, sales figures. And finally, the author receives payment. So what's the motivation? Why do authors decide to write a book? Many of them say that they want to pass knowledge to the future generations, you know, so that future generations know my work, and also to build a reputation and advance your career. This is especially true for early researchers and also for maybe PhD students as well, if they are planning to embark on a career in academics. It is also to improve awareness, about the research work. Like for example, you have a scientist, who has published articles in many journals. It can be spread over 100 over journal articles. So the work is spread over everywhere. So the feeling which most authors will have at that point in their career is to basically write a comprehensive book based on their research, or maybe can be even one book. It can be 2, 3, 4 books. So this is why to do it as well. So the fourth one is the personal feeling of achievement. And lastly, of course, if you are kind of asked to do it and you're required, so that's why you write a book as well. And in some places, you also write books to change opinion or gain financial gains or research funding requirements. So these are the different requirements on why authors decide to write a book. And also, motivation is to reach out to the correct people. You want to reach out to the academics in your field and fellow researchers that are doing very good research work in the certain topic area. And then you're also hoping that you can attract students or from the industry or general audience, or the government, things like this. So these are different sets of motivation for people to write books, to publish your own books. So the first thing you got to do is, before you set out to write a book, is you have to decide on what sort of book you want to write. As you can see, that I've presented before, books come from a broad scope to a narrow scope. So on the left side is the broad scope, where it covers a breadth of a research topic. It's basically like a consolidation of all research that's going on, very comprehensive, and it's a reference material. So it's like a handbook, for example. A handbook can be a book which covers a broad area. And then as you move forward to the middle, you have the monographs, or the textbooks, whereby they get very narrow and just start focusing on a specific topic or a specific field within a research topic. And then you go towards the right side, it gets into a more narrow focus, where you have a Springer brief, a 100-page Springer brief or an 80-page Springer brief. And it covers, like, for example, a case study, or it's like kind of original research, or it can be your PhD thesis as well, omitting all the other things, and you come up with a very concise book. So you need to plan of what sort of book, whether is it going to be a broad focus or a narrow focus. And I would like to give just a 2 minutes overview of converting PhD thesis to books, just to let you know that most theses, when you write your thesis, a thesis is written basically to address, or is addressed to examiners, your PhD thesis examiners. So it's written in that manner. It's not written as a normal monograph, for example. A monograph is written to address a general audience, to give the audience an overview of the research topic that you are trying to describe in the book. Whereas a thesis is basically you, a PhD student, addressing your examiners, trying to get them to understand the research that you have done for your PhD. So the style of writing is different. So there's a few elements in the PhD thesis that needs to be rewritten. There's some significant work that has to be done, and some kind of you have to kind of move things around within the book to make sure that it converts nicely into a monograph, which is what Springer is interested in. So, for example, in the methods section or the literature review, sometimes you have to shrink it, or you have to kind of rewrite it. Sometimes it can be quite you need to expand certain things. Maybe in the thesis, some theses are very, very concise, and in order to work it into a monograph, you need to expand it and enhance it. And also, sometimes for your PhD thesis contains a material that's already been published in journal articles. So that's also tricky, because if you're going to publish a book with Springer, you're going to publish with a commercial publisher. But your material, the rights of the material in your PhD thesis is already with the journal. So you have to get the required permissions from the journal to reproduce this material into the Springer book. And you have to do this, even though you are the author of that journal, you still have to do it. You still have to seek permission, because you have handed over the copyright to the journal already. So you have to bear that in. And just to emphasize that converting PhD thesis is not an easy option. There's a lot of reorganization, rewriting, reducing, maybe adding new perspective, and you may need to update your data. And then I like to talk about book series. So what are book series? Book series, for me, I like to describe it like a journal. It's very similar to a journal. A book series is for books. It's like an umbrella that you feed in volumes of books into it. For journals, it's also like an umbrella, but instead of you feed in journal articles into it. Like, for example, you have a journal in the field of solar energy, you'll be feeding in journal articles in solar energy. But if you have a book series in the area of solar energy, then you'll be feeding in individual titles of books in the field of solar energy. Like, for example, silicon processing for solar energy. That's one volume. It can be one book already. And then, efficiency of solar energy conversion, that can be another volume. So it's another 300-page book. So yes, so these are book series. And book series, like very similarly, like journals, you have what you call the series editor. So these are gatekeepers for the book series. They review the book proposals. They review the book manuscripts to make sure that they fit into the scope of the book and they are of high quality, that is acceptable to the series editor. Usually, like a journal, we have an editorial board, an international editorial board. In the book series, we have very well-defined aims and scope and the purpose of this series. Like, what do we want to publish? Are we publishing only monographs? Or is this a series just for conferences, for example? Or is this a book series that only publishes textbooks in physics? We have different book series like this. And it focuses on specific topics. Like I mentioned, solar energy, or certain geographical regions, like in the social sciences. Maybe you talk about water distribution in Southeast Asia. That's one book series. And then you have individual volumes covering different countries. And typically, a book series publishes 2 to 4 volumes, monographs, or edited volumes a year. We also have book series for Springer Briefs as well. So this is also part of a book series. So next, I want to talk about what do book publishing editors, which is myself, are looking for. So we are basically looking for cutting-edge original research, which is really important. We don't want to publish a book that already exists in Springer. Maybe it's published by another publisher. I think we still can work on that, because we do want to create competition for a book published by another publisher, but of course we don't want to publish a similar book that we already have in Springer. And we also look for books that have a very strong theoretical underpinning and grounding in literature, so give a very nice overview. We also have consideration whether is this book going to be international or very regional, appealing to the audience, so that we know how to market the book if we do decide to publish the book. Is the book relevant in ongoing debates? Is it in the hot topic? Energy is always a very hot topic. Water, and this or nano materials, new materials, for example, me being a material scientist, and whether this is a careful and considered proposal. I get many types of different proposals, and some proposals at one glance I know that this wasn't very thought through or worked on, or so something that you have to really help us with. And of course, it connects with a clear audience. Like, we know who will be targeted with this book. Whether is it going to be a monograph targeting academics, or is it going to be a professional book targeting professionals, or of working in a certain industry, things like this that we really need to know. So when you submit a book proposal, I have a standard form that I send to all my prospective authors. It's very easy. It's just a questionnaire. You answer everything. The book proposal is done. Sometimes it's great to have some chapter abstracts or sample chapters. If I'm not too sure about the author, sometimes I do ask requests for some sample chapters, so at least I can look into it, or my series editor can look into it. And any reviews or endorsement, sometimes you already have someone in your research community who was like, wow, you're writing this book, I can just write you an endorsement, kind of support your application for your book proposal to be accepted by Springer. Of course, there needs to be a review process followed by edited volumes. Edited volumes can be a little tricky because sometimes they do not attract the correct authors to write some chapters, so that might create problems. So sometimes I do ask a table of content with and a list of leading contributing authors for each chapter. At least I know that the book will be written by substantially qualified authors. And we also look at certain, you also need to contribute keywords, key audience, competing titles, which is really important, because if you do not do that, I will have to do that. And usually I do it anyways. So it's good that if you can provide a list. And of course, after that, the book proposal goes through an internal review process, which is within Springer. If I'm not very qualified in reviewing the book proposal, I may even send it out to external review process, to external reviewers, and then we have discussions within Springer about the book proposal. And if we are happy with the book proposal, we think we can sign a contract, we will offer a contract. Just a very brief pointers for submitting a book proposal. Things like introductory chapter, it's really good to have. At least it will give us more information to the reviewers, both internal and external, to have an overview of what the book is about. It should also be accessible, compelling, and clearly states the aims of the book. Includes maximum information, elaborate theoretical frameworks, highlights the unique aspects of the proposed book and how it's useful to target audience. So these are all very important pointers that you should consider, really, because sometimes I do receive book proposals where there's only just 3 or 4 sentences, and that doesn't really help me in trying to process the book proposal. So some effort needs to be put into. Chapter abstracts and keywords are also important. If you can include them, that would be great. And if you're not very sure, you can always seek advice from your colleagues or your peers, or one of the researchers down the corridor of your office, they will have published a book. They can look over it. They can have a fresh eye they can help to rearrange the book, rearrange the chapter. Sometimes that also might be a good way, because it's better that you get the book reviewed now, so that it's a much better shape when you submit it to Springer. So I'd just like to talk a little bit about edited collections or edited volumes, as I mentioned, because this is something that we get very often. So edited volumes or edited monographs, these are very different from conference proceedings. The conference proceedings are basically you publish every presentation or presenter, not every, but those who are accepted. Of course, conference proceedings, they also need to go through a review process, which Springer would like to know, and how the review process are carried out. Who are the reviewers? So these are things that we also look into for conference proceedings. But for edited volumes is different from conference proceeding. Conference proceeding, you can publish maybe 700 articles, 800 articles that was presented at a conference. But for edited volume is basically chapters. Instead of writing conference articles, you are writing a chapter that will fit into a monograph of a book. So this can also be organized from a conference. Like, for example, you organize a conference, you organize a special workshop in a certain research topic, and then you really invited very leading experts giving very different perspective of their research work. And, it'll be great if you can develop those papers or that has been presented at a conference into chapters. So you can even organize it into a edited volume book. So you have to definitely make sure that the authors write them as a chapter, and you can have up from 8 to 20 chapters, and it is divided into certain themes within the book. And you must give a very clear overall analytical framework of how this study is done. These are the kind of chapters that you need to look into. And also the book editor must be very important in organizing the chapters, so that there will be a very nice flow through the book, and make sure that it's not very haphazard, like how you would find in the conference proceeding book, which can be quite haphazard because the different articles are not linking with one another. But for edited volume, the chapters must have a nice flow and it must link up quite nicely. And also, textbooks is also another mention that I like to give when you're preparing book proposals, because textbooks, as you know, it is much tougher to get a textbook proposal accepted by Springer, because, as you know, textbook, it is used in coursework teaching. It requires a different style of writing. It is more instructional. The approach must be very systematic. The writing must include a lot of examples, include problems, and you have to have many different type of consideration. For example, who is the target audience in the group? For example, the clarity of competition. There's already competition in the market. Why is your book going to do above the competition or complement the competition? And why is it needed? And globally, if you can come up with a list of coursework that's already been offered in the US or maybe in the region, Singapore or Malaysia, in Australia, different universities who are offering this course that might adopt your book. Things like this would be helpful. Sample chapters are needed for textbooks. That's very important for us. A very detailed table of content, details about didactic elements on how you approach to teach this topic. And as I mentioned, exercises and sample questions is also needed. Some guidelines, do's and don'ts while submitting a proposal. This is a very, very wordy, there's a lot of words on this slide, but I would like to just go through and take a very snapshot of it. So titles, subtitles, abstract keywords, you have to be clear, because these are very important. These are very important elements for search engine optimization. So as I mentioned, we publish many books, 13,000 books a year, for example, as I said just now. And, it's very important that your book is findable, in Google searches, in Scopus and things like that. So you have to make sure that your titles are very clear, very concise. Do not have too much flowery language in it and all this. But most of the time when I get proposals, I make the corrections. I make suggestions to authors to make sure that they don't fall into that trap. As I mentioned, do not use very vague, generic phrases to make your titles very eye-catching or very poetic, things like this. You have to be careful. You have to be very detailed as possible for abstracts, and you don't reinstate chapter outline in the book information. You just want to describe the book. Do not describe, this is a book where chapter 1 is this, chapter 2 is this, chapter 2. You want to have more description of the book. Also, when you're addressing market and competition, it might be a good idea. It's helpful as well for me sometimes to suggest peer reviewers who might know your subject area, things like this. And also, you have to make sure that your proposal, make clear how your proposal is related to competing books. That means books that are already in the market, and how your book is unique from those competing books. And do not write there's no competition. I think that's not a very good thing to do. You should definitely, even if there's no competition, you should have some related books at least. Yeah. And lastly, yes, do not suggest your buddies or your friends to be peer reviewers for your book proposal. That's not going to work. We should definitely try to get an independent reviewer. As I mentioned, search engine optimization is really, really important. So these are basically slides or information that I got off the Springer website, actually. These are extra slides that I put in on my own. Just a guideline of how your book title should be and how you need to put in some thought and some effort into coming up with it. And hopefully with that, I'm able to fine tune it for you so that we get the best title for your book. So ideally, it shouldn't be longer than 50 characters. You don't want your whole cover of your book to be filled with the book title. Avoid being creative, poetic, which is what I said. Things like answer any questions users may have instead of raising new ones. You can also consider that when you come up with a book title. And also pick up a main keyword that would be used in your book title, and also the list of keywords associated to your book. And try to make it as unique as possible. One way is, to Google the title that you propose and see if there's any other book that has the same title. If there's some other book that has the same title, then we shouldn't use that title. We should use something else, or change it about, or do something with it. That's really important. Search engine optimization is also important for keywords. In a book proposal, we also ask you for a list of keywords, and these are important because when someone goes into, for example, Google search or even springerlink.com, things like this, keywords is easy. It's easy if you use the correct keywords that's also associated to your book. So, for example, what kind of result do users expect when they're searching for keywords? Like, for example, if you want a user to find your book, what kind of keywords should he be searching? So those are the keywords that you should be using for your book proposal. So these are different things that you can definitely go down this list of questions and look at as well. And unique selling points, the USPs, is something that we need to emphasize. USPs are basically how your book differs to the other books in the competing books. So you are supposed to write 3 to 5 short, concise for each book. very short sentence. You know, these are all the guidelines for your USP. Next topic that I like to talk about is the peer review process. So peer review, as you know, is a very integral part of academic publishing. It ensures the quality of scholarly of books vetted by a specialist. So peer reviewing is good. You know, it really helps you to enhance your publication. You know, because once it's published, it's out there, it's published. You can't retract it, you can't get it back. So it's very important that you go through this process, and it's also a learning process. You know, letting a third party or an outside perspective to look into your book proposal or your book manuscript to make sure that you are not wasting your time, you know, and doing the right way. So things like, you know, does the proposal offer useful or original contribution to the field? These are the kind of questions that we will ask our peer reviewers. Does it engage with recent scholarship? Are there sections that needs to be expanded or developed? Maybe your table of content is not enough, needs to be expanded more. Is it suitable for readership? You know, claimed by the author or editor. What are the strengths and weakness of the proposed book? And also, are there areas that the author has failed to consider? Is there some gap of knowledge that's not being addressed by the book? So this is what peer review process will do and help. Let me just go through briefly the Springer book publishing process that we have. This is a little cartoon that I also found online, which is great. We actually went through that very briefly just now already, but you can see that it's like you know, it's a workflow. It's basically a very fine well-oiled machine that goes through the workflow that, you know, really get us to publish 13,000 books a year. You know, we really have to have a very smooth and seamless workflow. So you can see over here, we start with a book development, from a writing proposal to proposal assessment, decision to publish or not, contract, and then manuscript submission, manuscript review revision, final manuscript, typesetting, publication of book, both in print and ebook, and finally, the international marketing and sales. I also like to touch on the timelines. This is very important so that we manage the expectations of our authors to make sure that we do not make the process too long, or you know, and they know the timeline needed for them to make from submitting the book proposal to the final published book. So for example, if you submit a book proposal, it can take 4 to 8 weeks for the proposal review. Sometimes it takes longer because sometimes it's really difficult to find reviewers to give comments, or sometimes reviewers are really busy. They're also, our reviewers are of course professors as well. So really busy for us to come back to us. Sometimes we have to be a little bit patient. Once this is done, we have an internal discussion. It takes 2 to 4 weeks. Yeah, sometimes for me, it takes within 2 weeks, it should be done. And then it depends on the author for the next step, for the manuscript writing. Some authors want to take 2 years to write their book. Some authors have their book manuscript ready in their drawer and they would like to give it to me on the spot. That is very nice. So, and then they submit the manuscript to us. So it depends how extensive is the review process for the manuscript. It can take between 8 to 12 weeks. And finally, this is the part where you hand over the manuscript to Springer, and Springer's production team takes over. It goes through editing, typesetting, the author proofs. So for this, it takes between 4 to 6 months. And then finally, the book is published, which is great. So the timeline where you submit your manuscript to us, it takes us about 4 to 6 months to publish your book. But if it is a conference proceedings, for example, for conference proceedings, we have a fast track production because we know that conferences, sometimes the book has to be published before the start of the conference. So we can shorten this production time to 2 months. This is possible for conference proceedings. Deciding on a publisher, yes, this is a very important, depending on the field that you come from, the reputation of your publisher is really important. It's also recognition from your university and your department that you publish your book with the ranking. Sometimes they have ranking within the universities as well. So you got to choose the right publisher. Hopefully you have a good experience, or you have experience before with Springer and had a very good experience that you continue working with us. The quality of the publication, the speed of the publication, and payment of the book. Yeah, that's important. We offer royalties, flat fee payments. So these are something that authors look into as well. Online availability of your book. This is something which Springer does. Of course, our books are all published first, so it's publishing electronic first, and then we have print on demand (POD). You also need to think about indexing. In certain databases. For the science and engineering, we use Scopus, Web of Science, so this is important. Sometimes you get recommendation from peers. Your colleague down the corridor says, "Oh, I published a book with Springer. It was great, very smooth. My book here, look at it. It's so beautiful." Also, the ability to publish open access, which Springer has. Springer has that option. Ability to track performance and usage of my book, and Springer's policy on low-cost edition. That's also one of the considerations. So at this point, I'm going to jump into open access publishing. If I look at the time, I have about, I would think about 20 minutes to wrap up. So what I think I will do is I will go through the rest of the presentation, and then maybe at the end, I will then be able to take questions. I think that would be better. Okay, so yeah, good. I'll continue this now on open access. So what is open access? Open access for books, as in journals, open access are available in 6 different types of Creative Commons copyright licenses. I hope you guys know what I'm talking about. If you do not know, I have a Wikipedia link at the bottom of this slide that lets you read into. So basically, open access can be published in different manner. Different kind of restrictions. For Springer, we publish our books with the CC BY, which is the top one over here. And then you have other forms of licenses. So why Springer choose CC BY is because CC BY, it gives you unrestricted usage of your material after it's out there. After it's been, like for example, I'm looking at the Wikipedia website, and it says that CC BY licensee may copy, distribute, display, perform the work, can make remixes, and if they give authors credit. So basically, with the chapter or journal article published by CC BY, you can do whatever you want with it. There's no restriction. If you go down the others, for example, the CC BY SA, there's some restriction. The licensing whereby you cannot share you cannot publish or you cannot republish and things like that. There's certain things. So as you go down these licenses, the restriction changes and it becomes more and more restricted. Oh, why do we publish open access? You know, that's one of the questions that everyone asks. As I mentioned, open access, that means it gives access to anybody. That means these articles are available on the net. Anyone can download it, can read it. There's no paywall. There's no restrictions. You can reuse the article. You can copy and paste um, into your book, but you have to give credit to the author. But as long as you reference the author, give credit to the author, it's okay to do that. So that allows increased readership, you know, because it's so easily available and people can download it and read it easily. It really increases readership, so people can find it easily. It reaches to a wider audience. You know, it helps to have good impact on the science. It sometimes some funding agencies require that you publish your work open access. Therefore, but they of course provide the funding to publish open access. And for open access, we also maintain high quality. That we do not mean that you know open access you pay and we publish whatever that there is. No, we only publish when the material is peer reviewed. So that's very, very important. And we also accept different type of books. And you know, availability is there because it's free, it's open access. And you know, we also have free author services for our open access authors. This slide is just basically to show you the open access effect. So over here, if you compare a OA book, an open access book versus a non-OA book, you find there's a 50% more citations. You know, it's seen very, very easily. You can also see it over here, whereby on the chart above, you have an OA book, which is the dark gray. You can see that the average downloads of an OA book compared with a non-OA book. The OA book, the downloads, it increases exponentially. So because of the free access, the citation, so you have higher downloads for OA books compared to non-OA books. You have much higher citations for OA books compared to non-OA, and online mentions, which is, you know, Twitter or Facebook and things like that, you know, it's also much higher. People are discussing more about your book. You have two types of OA models. One is the gold OA model and one is the green OA model. Gold OA model is the OA model that I just described to you, whereby you can use the publisher's version. It's available freely on the publisher's website. It's open access. There's the CC BY, licensing, and you have a fee paid to the publisher. For green OA is what I think most journals are doing right now. So green OA is basically self-archiving. So you can self-archive the author version of the manuscript, not the publisher's version, and is available freely in some other website, not on the publisher's website, but maybe on like the physics community have their own archiving website. Even the math as well, the community have their own archiving website, or you can even do it in the university library, or you know, even the author's website. And for green OA, it involves embargo. Maybe the journal says, okay, for 2 years you cannot have this self-archiving. You shouldn't let anyone download the article. You have to wait 2 years after the article is published, then the green OA kicks in. Then you can use it. The thing about open access is there is a lot of predators out in the open access seas, so you're swimming with the sharks. So be careful of who you submit your journal article to. Make sure that this is a reputable journal, a reputable publisher for your research, because you don't want to get stuck in the sense that you submit them and they just take your article and publish it, and you can't retract, you can't pull out. You know, it's stuck. So there is a website that you can look into before you consider the journal to check whether this is a reputable journal or not. Yeah. Okay, so next I'm going to talk very briefly about ethical compliance. This is a topic that not only covers books, but it also covers journals as well, just to make sure that we are all on the same page. So what are the fundamental ethical issues in publishing? So these are the common ones that we face day to day. The first one is data fabrication or data falsification. Next one is duplicate submission. That means an author who submits his book proposal to Springer and he submits to Wiley, Elsevier, all the others, trying to fish just to see who will accept his book proposal. And then, of course, you have plagiarism issues as well, duplication of text and figures, which is important. Author issues, if something happens, you did not add in an author into the book where he has contributed quite to the book, the scientific content of the book. Or another problem is keep putting famous authors onto the book, even though he didn't do anything, he didn't write the book and all that. So that's also another problem. And you have what you call undeclared conflict of interest, or this is something that has some kind of background, kind of deal going on, financial gain, or things like this, or like you write a book to market a certain company's product. That's also a no-no. We do not agree to that. Yeah. Other ethical problems are, maybe animal experiments, things like that are also important. Yeah, you make sure that this is humanly done. Yeah. Okay. So if we find something unethical, what do we do? So different universities, different organizations, different countries, different publishers, they all have their own policies on reusing data from other publications and all this. So, I mean, everyone has his own perspective, But so what has happened is the International Association of STM publishers, they came out with a set of guidelines for everyone to follow, So we not only have just based on individual opinions, but a standardized. So they came up with what they call the Committee on Publication Ethics, or COPE, C-O-P-E, guidelines, and they have guidelines on every aspect of publication. So if you're unsure of whether what you're doing is right or wrong, these are some of the questions that you can ask yourself, or, if you don't know, you're not sure, you can ask me. I should be able to advise you accordingly. And, last thing we want to do is publish a book and having to retract it. We don't want to do that. This is a problem over here. These are what you call the plagiarism pitfalls. So these are the things that you should bear in mind as you are, reading certain published book or abstract. So you need to really do write things in your own words. Basically, if you copy, paste, or if you need to even reuse anything, you need to really get the proper permissions, or if you find that it doesn't go within the scope of the permission, like for example, you can only copy and paste only 50 words, for example, and you have copied paste 200 words, then don't do it. Go rewrite it, change it, move it around and things like that. So it's very important. This copyright is very important, and we are able to find it. It's very easy because nowadays everything is online. We have plagiarism tracking software, which everyone is using it. Authenticate, turn it in. All this very important. So if you do not have one, maybe you can ask your organization to help you with it, to make sure that you use this similar tracking software to make sure that you do not accidentally fall into this plagiarism pitfalls. It's very, very important. And also for open access, you know, as I mentioned, that open access, the licensing restrictions are very different. So if you are looking at an open access article, it says open access, please look into whether is it the one that has the highest or the one with no restrictions, which is the attribution CC BY which Springer uses, or if it has some other licenses, please look into the licenses to make sure that you are not infringing any copyright issues or reusing the content when you're not supposed to in a certain way. So the licensing, you make sure that you understand when you are trying to reuse the content. And of course, we offer our authors free tutorials. All this information that you have gotten on my slides are basically from the springer.com website. So you can go there, you can go through it. There is a little bit of a course over there as well that you can do. You can read through the information, and there's plenty. We have tutorials, things like this. So please feel free. So now we have gone through all the consideration of preparing your book proposal, writing your book, open access books. You know, you've submitted your book proposal, you've gone through the proofing, your book is published. Congratulations, well done. What next? Promote your book, you know, promote your book after publication. You are the research scientist, you are connected, plugged into your research community, go to conferences, interact with people, carry your book around, let Springer know, let the publisher know, hey Ramesh, you published my book, I'm going to be at this conference, you know, it's an interesting conference. I want to, you know, promote my book there. How can I do it? I can help you with that as well. You can also promote it on social media, put it on LinkedIn, put it on Twitter. We do it as well. It'd be great if you do it because, as I said, you are plugged in with your research community. And, you know, you can also check with your publisher, which is me, you know, how we go about doing it. Or we can do a bulk purchase. We can have a sale at a certain conference, things like this. Yeah, we can do all that. Just want to talk about Scopus indexing application. So this is something that is very difficult for me to touch on because Scopus, as you know, Scopus is a database indexing company that is separate from Springer. You know, it's separate from Springer. So we do send them metadata, we send them details. Every time a new book is published, we send them daily updates. Whether Scopus indexes it in good time or on time, it's something that we have to send constant reminders to them, you know, things like that. But of course, there's a criteria for Scopus indexing. Like, for example, for a book series, for example, if you can publish in a book series which is already indexed by Scopus, they look into things like the editorial board, whether the book has gone through peer reviews, you know, ethical issues, impact citations. It's a lot of consideration. But the good news is we have our abstract and indexing team within Springer that helps us with details like this. So if I have any problems, I usually go back to them. Yeah. Just to show that Springer is leading in terms of size and by citations for books. So you can see these two pie chart over here on the left and on the right. So on the left is basically English language titles. You can see the titles whereby Springer Nature covers about 30% of the books index in Scopus, while the remaining 70% are rest of market. And then if you look at citation shares, you know, so our books also get cited as well. And for citation shares, our market share is even bigger. You know, it's for 43% compared to 57%. And then this is also in STM. So the one I showed above was just scholarly books overall, across different areas, including human sciences and business. But this is just for, and I say STM, which is science, technology, and medicine. We are very good in it. Our title shares, our number of books, index and scopus are about almost half, 43%, and our citation share is even more than 50%. This is for the social sciences. Our program is a little bit smaller compared to the other publishers, but still we have a very good substantial 20% chart for both title, citation, title, index, and citation as well. Okay, so I'm in the last part of my presentation, the future of books. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. So Springer, we believe in innovation. Since I joined this company in 2012, I've seen a lot of development that has gone on. There's always an emphasis on technology to integrate it into the traditional book, and trying to make it much smarter, much usability is to increase it, to make it more useful for the end users. So we set out a roadmap for this, to enhance our book, both in print and electronic, to improve reading options, and also, of course, make sure that our readers are able to find their books in a much faster manner. So let me just introduce to you very briefly Springer Book Lab. These are the selected innovative projects that Springer is doing at the moment. So in the Springer Nature Book Lab, we have different type of innovative projects that's going on. So first is the living book, and then we have the machine-generated content book, social reading, print and ebook integration, and online distance learning. Let me start with living books. So living books are books that we have been using mostly for major reference work, like for example, handbooks, because handbooks are something that's always evolving. It's a handbook of a very broad scope topic. So what are living books? It allows online updates of book chapters. That means new developments can be added to the book, and also new developments can be communicated earlier and continuously, and it also combines the authority of traditional books and the speed of electronic communication. So this is something that is being worked on and is already being used already. Next is machine-generated content. So in April 2019, Springer published its first, I would think, AI written book called On Lithium-Ion Batteries. So this was a really big buzz last year, and it shows that we have started AI in writing books. It's not an easy task. Of course, the book has to be vetted through by reviewers and things like that. But this is a start of what we are trying to do as well for machine-generated books. Social reading, we are trying to integrate social media with our books so that we can promote discussions, a forum, and things like that for our books. Print and ebook integration, we are looking into different things. Like, for example, we are trying to make the print book have more electronic resources. Like, for example, a book can be integrated with a QR code. Like you're reading a book, there's a QR code, or for video, please scan this QR code. So you have your mobile phone and you scan your QR code and you watch the video, of what is written in the print book. So it's using both a print book and your electronic videos, and making it more interactive and interesting. I like to think of it as the book that my son is using right now. The book that teach him how to read. There's a magic pen that he puts on certain words, and the pen has a speaker and it says things. So it's kind of get things more interesting. And of course, we have the MOOC and the book for online courses, which is very important. That's something we are also developing. And lastly, online distance learning. I think this is something that is going to take off. Since we are in the COVID situation, and I think a lot of home-based learning is happening, online learning, distance learning. Sometimes you are stuck, you can't go to your university. If you're in Singapore, you have to go to a university in the US. You can do online learning. So these are something that we are doing with iVersity. iVersity is over here. So if you're interested, we can also discuss about that as well. Something that is not mentioned in this slide, which I failed to put inside that I just realized, is Springer videos. We also have the option of Springer videos where we can, instead of writing a book or a research monograph, Springer is able to publish your research as a video. For example, if you want to write a book on carbon nanotube fabrication, just for example, how to fabricate your own carbon nanotubes. You can even come up with a video instead of writing a book and writing down the process. A video which is shot by you, the author. We give you certain guidelines on how to do it. It's also possible. So Springer Video is also one of the innovative things that we have already launched. Yes, we also have this future 360 virtual reality thing, really cool. You can see, books whereby moving your head around using, I've not done it, so I can't really explain too much, but I just, we have integrated books with virtual reality as well. Yes. Okay, with that, I leave you with my last slide. So this is a slide that the Springer book team came out last year. So basically it's a book gardening slide where on the top of this slide over here, if you look from the left to the right, you have author, who are writing books, developing ideas, having discussions, doing their research above ground, and then they go to the library, they try to grow a book, they plan an idea. It's very, very extensive. And then you go below ground, is where you submit your manuscript to the publisher, and it goes through all that production process, the copy editing, the innovation. The book gets into a database, it goes through the archive, metadata, communication, from customer service. So this is to basically show that as book publishers or as publishers, we do a lot of under the ground work, which sometimes you do not see. So yeah, with that, thank you so much for your attention. And I guess I have some time for answering questions. And with that, I hand over to Mabel to take over.
Thank you so much, Ramesh. We have a number of questions for you. We still have 10 minutes to answer the questions. So the first one is if I have published paper with a journal, can I publish it in a book with Springer Nature? If yes, does the published book afterwards be indexed in Scopus by default?
Okay, so I answer the first part. So if you have material already published in a journal, and I assume that this is a subscription-based journal, whereby you need to hand over the copyright of the content of your article to the journal. So if you want to reproduce the same material in a Springer book, you need to ask permission from the journal. And some journals, they let you reuse content for free. Depends on which journal, you have to go and check. For free for like certain number of words or certain number of figures. But some of them require you to pay some fee. So you need to get permission. You cannot just publish it in the Springer book. Because both books, we can't have both owning the same, the copyright to the same material. So you can't do that. Okay, so I've answered that. So the answer to that is you need to get permission. Okay, for the second part about indexing in Scopus. So indexing in Scopus can be done in a few ways. So one way is if we publish the book in a book series that's already indexed by Scopus. It's like very similar to a journal. Some journals are indexed by Scopus, and some journals are not indexed by Scopus. So for book series, it's the same thing as well. Some book series are indexed by Scopus and some are not. So we can actually try to get your book to be published in a book series that's already published, that's already indexed by Scopus, and hopefully through that route, your book will be indexed by Scopus. Yeah. I have to warn you, the timeline for Scopus to index the book is very long. Sometimes it can take 3 to 4 months after the book has been published. So it's something that you have to bear in mind as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Mabel. Yeah.
Thank you. And another question is, it seems that Springer Nature published only in English. As far as I know, it is not, right? So what other possibility of language that authors can publish?
Springer only publishes in, we have English and we have our German language program, but that's only in Germany because, you know, Springer is a German company. And we have a very strong German language program. But other than English and German, no. We don't publish any other languages. Yeah.
Okay. And then the third question is how to publish a thesis. What is the criteria for publishing a thesis?
For Springer thesis, there is a criteria in terms of there's a process actually. I mean, first thing is the university department must be listed in the top 50 in the world. And number two, there must be a nomination from your supervisor and your department. So there is all these requirements. But if you need more information, I think it'd be better if you send me an email. And if you can send me an email, I can just send all the information and, you know, yeah, guide you through it. Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. After this talk, I can send you the email of the attendees who has raised this question.
Sure. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It seems that it takes a long time to finish a book. So if in the review process or the production process, I have some extra information to add or find a new